Welcome to another Alpha Audio review video. We don't do these a lot. I don't know, maybe we're just too busy and we do a lot of live streams. But I think this Bladelius ASK Integrated amp was worthwhile discussing. Just because I didn't really know the brand and I didn't know the person behind it, Mike Bladelius. He's a Swede and he has a very rich audio history. He worked with Nelson Pass on some threshold amplifiers. He worked with Classe. He knew a lot of people like Don D'Agostino and Mark Levinson and people like that. So he's not someone to just say, oh yeah, he made some amplifiers. No, he has a very rich history. And the funny thing is, I heard the Pulse Labs signature in this amplifier. We play with the X150.8 for a long time now, and I've owned several preamps from Pulse Labs like the XP12, the XP10, the X2.5, and before that I worked on with some Pulse Labs gear as well. So I know this signature and I like it. It's a certain sound and I can recognize the Pulse Labs sound in this ASK Integrated. Now these names, ASK is not like a question, but I'm gonna just read it because I can't reproduce it from heart. ASK was the name of the first man in the North Middle Earth and also the name of this integrated amplifier. ASK, together with the first woman in the Norse world, Embla, was created by Odin, which is more or less the case for this integrated amplifier that we have designed using all the experience we made from our flagship integrated model, the Odin. Now, I like these northern mythical names a lot. Not sure why, I just like Sweden and Norway and stuff like that. We go there on holiday sometimes and I like the countries as well. But back to this ASK. It's an integrated amplifier, but it has a streamer inside as well and you can add a DAC and a phono preamp. Now the DAC is a €2,000 upgrade and the phono preamp is a €1,350 upgrade. Now that might sound like a lot, especially for the DAC, but the DAC is pretty darn good. We compared it to our Sonnet Pacitea, and although I like the Sonnet Pacitea a little bit more in some ways, it's a little bit faster maybe, but it's a very, very good DAC inside and definitely worth the €2,000. And although they say on their spec sheet like, yeah, it's 134 dB signal noise ratio, the integrated amp I measured around minus 110 dB, and it didn't really matter if I used the analog or the digital inputs. And although minus 110 dB might sound like an average performer, it isn't. Most integrated amps don't go a lot lower than that because of all the electronics inside. This amplifier has a huge toroidal transformer. It's like a 2000 volt amp power supply, and that's really, really big. But you need that in order to put out this much power. It has 220 watts in 8 ohms and 440 watts in 4 ohms, but it can deliver around 68 amps of current. And especially that 68 amps is hard to do in a stable way. Now we measured the output as well. It didn't really make the figures in the specification sheet on our test bench. We measured around 170 watts in 8 ohms and 270 watts in 4 ohms, but it really depends on where you put the dots, like is it at 1% THD or is it at 10% THD? I'm not sure how they measured it, but let's just say it delivers enough power for all loudspeakers that we have in our listening room. The TADs play with ease, most bookshelves, even hard speakers this unit can drive without any problems. Now, if we look at the other inputs, I mean, it has a DAC, so you have optical inputs, coaxial inputs, AES, and for the streamer we have USB, Ethernet, Wi-Fi as well, I see at the back, and it has a balanced input, real balanced, not fake balanced, and some single-ended inputs, and even a tape loop. Yeah, a tape loop and a pre-out. So you can add your power amp and you can add another device in the loop as well. And the funny thing is, you can actually put this amplifier in a low bias and a normal bias. Now I would say low bias is normal, and the normal bias would be high bias because it goes into class A pretty darn heavily. It also gets really hot then. So if you use this mode, and it is better, I can guarantee you that. You can really hear it, and I can actually measure it. If you put it in normal bias or class A mode, it gets hot. So make sure you get enough ventilation, because you can touch the top, of course, but it does get really, really warm. So it needs some ventilation. Now, about the sound, like I said, it has a very bass-lapsy feel for me. The mid-range is really smooth and clear, and definitely not upfront or harsh. It's really smooth. The bass is very nicely defined and very controlled, but yeah, that's because of the huge power supply, I think. And the upper end is really smooth, not polished, very clear, but also not harsh at all. And I wouldn't say this is an integrated amplifier I'm listening to. And yeah, well, that's the progress in the hi-fi, I guess. We just can build integrated models with DA converters and streamers without issues. But it is expensive to do so. And this is one of the few amplifiers I measured that didn't have any noise from streaming modules or DACs inside. Most of the time in the more affordable range, I mean, this is in this combination 12,000 euros. That's a lot of money. But like a Hegel H590 is also around that price. So it has some competition in Hegel and maybe some Mark Levinson integrated amps with DACs. But this is one of the few that measured very, very well. It has a noise floor that's just so nice and even. No spurs, no bumps, no nothing. And yes, it's minus 110 dB, but it's more than enough for a dark background. Believe me, you don't hear that. So, very impressive. And for me, it was a nice brand to get to know. I didn't know Bladelius. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's stupid. I didn't know Bladelius, and I didn't know Mike Bladelius, but he's a guy. I'm happy to have encountered this brand. Thank you very much, and the full review will be, of course, on Alpha Audio pretty soon. Thank you for watching. See you. Bye-bye.